How do you use mindfulness as the basis for mindset and well-being coaching?
For me, mindfulness is, yes, it's a practice. Yes, it's a meditation practice, but it's ultimately about just paying attention to where you are moment to moment. And so the mindfulness piece is to course correct as you start to notice that you're anxious.
If something bothers me today, that means that probably is important to me. And if it is, then maybe let's sleep on it for a second. Let's meditate on it. Let's be mindful about this decision. Today, we're going to talk about mindfulness around limiting beliefs and how to reduce anxiety and spin. And the spin that I would like to put on this one is not only the one that you're thinking about, which is productivity, success, goal setting, New Year's resolution, which all of it is true and a lot of people talk about it. But the spin that I would like to put on this topic also is integrative medicine and integrative healthcare. Because if we are able to reduce stress, we will be able to be more healthy. And if we can achieve more with a smile, being mindful about what we want, this is going to be very, very good for our health as well. So we're going to talk about that. And if you know somebody who is struggling because maybe they have a little bit too much on their plate, which in 2023 is probably almost all of us, then share this video with them, because we will be sharing some simple, easy to apply strategies that you can apply every day. And who knows, maybe that's going to move the needle for you. So I'm here with a very, very special guest. She is the best authority that I could find when it comes to this topic, and I'm super excited to introduce her to you. She's a well-being and resilience strategist. She's guiding driven professionals and entrepreneurs to create space for their own well-being, but without sacrificing their impact at work or at home. She is the founder of Minding Your Minutes. Minding Your Minutes, definitely check it out. And she's here to show us how to stop living on autopilot and start focusing on what matters most to us. Dr. Brigette Serfaty, welcome to Polish Your Life.
Thanks, Mike. I'm so excited to be here, and I appreciate the invitation. I can't wait to see where we go.
Yeah, can't wait to see where we go as well. So maybe let's start with tying the topic of the conversation today to what you do. If you could share with us, how do you use mindfulness as the basis for mindset and well-being coaching?
You'll probably regret you asked that question. And so for me, mindfulness is, yes, it's a practice. Yes, it's a meditation practice, but it's ultimately about just paying attention to where you are moment to moment. And so the mindfulness piece is to course correct as you start to notice that you're anxious, or as you start to notice that you're distracted or wasting time or worried or anywhere other than here. That gives us the opportunity to then decide what the next action is. So it's kind of a productivity strategy in some ways, but it's mostly about just adjusting your moment to moment well-being. And so that's the way I use it as a basis, because it helps to change your mindset to running scattered and crazy all day to making those decisions and those moment to moment course corrections. Hope that makes sense.
It does. It does. And I'm thinking about somebody who is watching right now, and maybe they have a question that it's easy for you to say because you're the mindfulness expert, right? So maybe you practice hours, days, months, years, decades, and maybe they don't have that practice. And while you're going to tell them, pay attention to what you do, be mindful, and then adjust. It sounds so simple as a concept. At the same time, how do you transfer? Really, really curious what your answer is going to be. How do you transfer that power that you may have after all these years of training? How do you transfer it to somebody on the receiving end so they can actually apply some of these strategies without needing a decade to learn them?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a great question, but any of us can pay attention to the present moment. And then mindfulness is simply that, paying attention to the present moment and your actual experience. So it's not what we think is going on, it's what we're actually feeling in that moment. So any of us can do that by just turning our attention to the experience and then noticing when we're telling a story about it, because that's where we get in trouble, is that we start listening to our thoughts. So the mindfulness piece is what's actually happening right now. And so
Mm-hmm.
you don't need a decade of training to know that. You can feel it, you can sense it, you can hear it, you can taste it. You just tune into your senses to notice that. And so that awareness piece is first. And then the next question that comes up without any training is, okay, I'm noticing how I'm feeling. What do I need? What is next? So there's some skill in answering that question that comes. And so I think that's the part of, you can do it faster after you've had some training to recognize what's happening in the moment, recognize your thoughts and your stories. But you can do it, any of us can do it right now by simply pausing and asking that question, what is it that I'm experiencing right now? Where are my thoughts? What are my thoughts? So that's the mindfulness piece is, oh, I'm really anxious. I wonder what it is that I need. I need to take a breath. I need to drink a water. I need to stop scrolling on my telephone and come back to the project that I'm working on. So we can always answer that question. The framework that I use is align, because that helps me stay aligned with what I could be doing right now. That's the most important thing. So I think of that as awareness and listening to my body, my surroundings, my thoughts, and then inquiring what it is that I need, and then gathering the resources and then taking action. So it's just a quick process, over and over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if somebody tries that, for example, they're going to try to apply it. So they're going to mindfully wait for what happens. They're going to be mindfully having that mindful exercise. They're going to try to be present. They're going to try to focus on what is, and they're going to try to let these thoughts float around, because I know that our mind, you said in one of your videos, is like, your mind is going to wander. That's what minds do, right? So your mind is going to wander, and then you let it be, and then you have another layer that I think could be a bit challenging for people. I know it certainly is for me, is emotions, right? So we have our mindfulness moment, right? At the same time, we have the awareness of our thoughts, and maybe we don't want these thoughts to throw us off the course, right? So now we are still mindful. We just let them pass by. We let the mind wander. But emotions, I think this is the one where it's a little bit harder for us to deal with it. And maybe you have a good answer for it. So I see emotions as another layer of something that maybe we need to control in that moment or ignore. I don't know what your advice would be, but if somebody is emotionally just stressed, unstable because something just happened, and now they try to be mindful, they need to stop. One of the amazing people that I was listening to recently, he was talking about the moment of stress and the moment of crisis. This is the moment where the most successful people actually go very calm. Very calm. Hard to do, but it's a good concept. So how do you calm not only your thoughts but also your emotions?
And so I think of emotions and thoughts from a mindfulness perspective really in the same way, which is, what is the action that's called for with the presence of this thing? So I'm not trying to push the emotion away. That just makes it louder. So you know this prop because it sits on my desk, but those thoughts and emotions, these little lizardy brain things that try to pull us off course, that's what distracts us and what keeps us from doing the thing that's in front of us that really matters to us, is because we think we have to deal with the emotion in some way or push it away, or it's bad. It's not bad. It's telling us something. The thoughts are giving us a message, the emotions are giving us a message, and then we're choosing what that response is. And so we don't really have to do anything with them. We don't push them away. We don't necessarily even let them go by. We just acknowledge their presence, and then we ask the question, what is called for? So the emotion part's actually important because it's giving us a message. So if I'm angry, that emotion, it's not a bad emotion. People think it's like, oh, I'm angry, I'm not supposed to be angry. Like, no, you're angry for a reason, but what's beneath it? It's the inquiry that comes next. I'm angry. What is the next action? And so I could react to it, or I could take a breath and then decide how to respond. So emotions are always a chance to decide.
So in a sense, emotion is going to give you a hint of what's underneath, right? So we need to kind of like learn how to read between the lines. So I understand it. So your mindfulness practice will not necessarily, or the advice that you would give somebody you're coaching is not going to be necessarily that they need to have a certain agenda for that mindfulness session, but meditate around it, or be present, and then when the emotion comes, be aware of it, and then try to read what's underneath, and then
yeah,
yes.
read what's underneath, but really bring some kindness to that practice. Like, oh, I'm really feeling sad, I'm really feeling anxious, I wonder what's underneath. So instead of pushing it away, when we push it away, there's that whole adage about what we resist persists. It gets bigger. If we push it away, it's just going to get louder until it gets our attention.
Yeah, because we
like
we
just like
we
a
do give it
2-year-old.
attention. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. So
Yeah.
good or bad attention definitely is like we fear something that can manifest that very thing in our lives, and we can see it with law of attraction practitioners all the time talking about it. So I definitely understand that. So from this exercise perspective, I'm trying to go a little bit deeper, and it may get weird at some point, so let me know if I go too deep. So Eckhart Tolle, right? The power of now. So something that in that book that really struck me as very, very useful is realizing that we are not necessarily our body. And then we can observe our body and observe the feelings by the body. But because of a simple fact that we are observing it, that means that we cannot be it. And if we are not it, we don't have to take it personally, right? So that kind of, at least that's how I understood one of the messages that was in that book. So I'm like, okay, this is actually helping me be kind to myself, because then if I am not necessarily the person that is experiencing some sort of pain, then I can be kind to that person and provide the environment in which that person can thrive. I can guide that person that I'm living in the body in, right? I'm curious if this is kind of like the way that you practice meditation, you coach people to also imagine that you are not your body and then you have the power to control your body, or would that be a little bit of a different approach?
So I don't use the word control, but I do acknowledge that same thing. Like I can watch the experience of my body as a compassionate observer. I can watch my thoughts, I can watch my emotions as a compassionate observer. But I like to work with the body instead of be separate from the body, so that I can move those emotions through. So I actually, I'm not trying to, some schools of meditation are really trying to transcend the body. I include it as part of the mindfulness practice. It's the way that I was trained to be with the body, and it's partially because of my healthcare training too. It's, the body's part of the experience, but it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. And so that's really what I like to work with people, whether we're looking at body, mind, spirit, any of it. Like, we're not trying to fix a problem. We're trying to acknowledge the situation that's happening and work with it. There's a befriending and a tenderness that comes with acknowledging that experience. So I can treat the body with compassion, which helps it release, So the pain experience doesn't stay as long sometimes if we're paying attention to its movement. Most of the pain experience, and not always, but a lot of it's because of the thoughts we're telling about. I shouldn't be in this pain. I should relax. I should be better at XYZ. So the shoulding is what adds to the misery of the experience.
On many levels. Yeah, many levels, right? So this is good to know. And one of the things that comes to my mind when we think about the analysis of the title itself, right? So we're going to talk about the limiting beliefs, and then that's usually transfers to a self-talk, right? So we're going to have that voice always with us, and that voice could be the friendly one, and it not always is the friendly one, right? So how would you say, when we tie it all in to the healthcare component and integrative health, let's talk about stress, right? So we have the self-talk and stress. And in many cases, that self-talk is going to feed that stress, right? So what can we do? Give us some practical tips. Somebody's watching this and maybe they want to try something, even now watching this video, and they want to try something that will be more towards mindfulness to limit the self-talk, to limit the stress. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, first of all, that we're not pushing that lizard brain away. So this lizard is trying to protect you.
Let me see the lizard. Let me see the lizard.
It's lizard. Closer. I mean, this lizard is awesome. So this lizard has a tag that says abundance. It has earrings because it's not a mean guy.
Can you come closer to the camera so people can see it? All right.
Pretty great, right?
But
this is the way we treat ourselves all day, is that we listen to these mean thoughts about ourselves, which augments the stress response. And so when I work with clients or students or other healthcare practitioners, we really spend a lot of time in figuring out what those little lizardy brain beliefs are. What are those voices? Because the only way to work with that voice is to know what it's saying. And then at some point it takes a while, but it gets to be kind of funny. It's like, oh, here's that story about how I'm going to be broke and living under a bridge again. Is that really true? Am I currently experiencing any of that? Not currently. So there's all of this worry that adds to the stress. And so the more that we can listen to that voice and not believe it, it's kind of like we're not just our body, we're not just our pain, we're also not just this voice. There's a whole lot of good thoughts too. So you have to hear kind of the space in between those mean thoughts, and then really get to know their content. And once you know their content, you can realize that you think a lot of things that aren't that too.
Okay, so question. Just a practical exercise. So let's say while listening to you, there is some voices, right, that people may hear, I may hear, say, I'm listening, and then that's the voice. Some of them may be very positive. I've been training myself to be much more positive than negative, and it's like it became a muscle. But sometimes, something creeps in. I'm like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
So if that happens, would you extend an open invitation to that voice and actually listen to it and read between the lines, like you mentioned? It's like, let's see what's underneath? Or would you try to suppress it with as simple as like, shut up, it's like, this is not the voice that I'm listening to. I'm going to listen to this guy because he's nicer to me. What approach is better, the combative one or the one with the kindness and invitation?
So it's an invitation to listen to the kind voice, but you can still tell the lizard, not right now. And so if you push it away, it's coming back with a vengeance. So at least I've found is that if I say, shut up, you're not helpful to me, he goes, ha, I'll just bring on the firepower. I'm really going to get your attention. But if I say, I'll talk to you in 30 minutes, I'm focused on this project, then it'll suppress. It just wants to be heard. It doesn't necessarily have to be heard right now. So I do park the thought. Like, I see you, I park it, I see you, lizard brain, and I'll name it. So if I'm having I see you, I'm too exhausted, I see you, you have no time, I'm going to come back to you in 30 minutes. I have a timer on my desk. It's an hourglass timer. If I'm doing a work sprint, then they're not invited for that 30 minutes.
Okay.
So that's a way that I park them in the parking lot. I'll deal with you later, because if I go down that rabbit hole of what could I think instead, what is this voice trying to tell me? That's another way that sneaky distraction thoughts get me off track.
And I can see how that can also help you stay focused, because that distraction would disconnect you from the task, and then coming back also takes some energy to process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
I have a practice. I just call it deep work because I borrowed it from Cal Newport, and I'll have a notepad by my desk, and if something comes up, I might jot a note like, I need to deal with this later. I need to pay the electric bill, or if I keep having this thought, I might jot something down. But when I'm going to get that project done.
So not only with the thoughts that are like the voices that are there, but even with the, oh, I got to do this, or the shoulds, right? It's like, I should do this, I should do that. Don't forget about this. Then you would allow that to park on a piece of paper somewhere, in a designated space. That's a good tool. That's a really good good tip for people. And for you watching or listening, these are the things that are gold, because somebody spent decades, trying to learn this stuff. Pay attention, because these things work, and they can help us be more mindful, but also more productive. So combining these two, mindfulness and productivity, there is a topic of mindful productivity, right? Or mindfulness in productivity space. So let's talk about that. Let's get a little bit more of these active tools that people can just grab and use it. So one, you just mentioned. What are maybe 2, 3 more that you can give people that are going to be practical?
So if I'm looking at something from a productivity perspective, I have a planner, but the first question that I have is, what is the biggest value or biggest impact project that I'm going to work on in this block? So it's one thing. So that's where the mindful thing, I'm going to do one thing at a time. And I choose it. It doesn't choose me. It's not the loudest thing necessarily. It's the most impactful, most valuable thing. And so then the tool is turn down the volume of everything else. So you're not in your email, you're not also listening to the thoughts or distracted. But if you can spend that time and do that exercise of value and impact, not volume, that will help. So that's kind of the first place. And then also just having that parking lot list of all of the things that you do want to work on, ever how you organize it. Planner, list maker, electronic. I know you use Trello. Wherever you're parking your projects, they're all great, and you're going to get to them when you get to them, but not all at once. So there's that discernment piece. So that's where the mindful productivity comes in, instead of just the churn of the volume. Because we get that dopamine hit when we're just doing all the things, and then we get to the end of the day and say, I didn't accomplish anything that was important. So you have to do that work at the beginning to say, what is the most important thing? And that's the thing I'm going to work on. People use different acronyms for that, but I hear MIP sometimes, and I won't use mine, MIFT. I won't tell you the acronym, but you can figure it out. But MIP is most important thing.
Okay. So, like, for example, Brendon Burchard would talk about done by one, right? So he says, try to be done by one. And what he means by that is that some people literally are done by one, but if you're done by one with the most important projects for a given day, the biggest priorities for you, doesn't mean that this is the biggest priorities for the business, because it could be calling a family member, it could be something that is important for you. But now if you're done by one, the day, in that first portion of the day, is already productive. And then now we have, oh my goodness, from 1 to, depending on when people go to sleep, we still have a ton of time that we can do something with it. Ed Milet has another one that is very interesting. He says that he has basically 3 times more days, because he divides the 24 hours. He actually divides his days into 3 6-hour periods. And he says, the first day I'm doing this, the second day I'm doing this. So he's like, if I have more days, I'm going to get more done. So I know that when you're watching this or listening to this, whatever strategy or technique may be working for you, just remember to be mindful about it and to use these tools to also stay focused on the most important things, because that's where I know I struggle. And even with all the theoretical knowledge, it's like I know what I'm supposed to be doing, and yet sometimes, like, why am I checking my email? Why am I checking the social media? Why am I responding to this text message today? And sometimes there's an important thing to mention is that some of these things will be justifiable. It's like if there's a family emergency, of course you're going to respond. But I think the key, and that's where it's been helpful for me, is to set up my own rules and to make sure that I'm following the rules that I set up. I think that's that is very, very important. So when we talk about stress and we talk about anxiety, let's talk about the clinical aspects of this and then how that can play a role in the integrative healthcare model. I'm just curious about what type of providers, if somebody is watching and maybe there are a specific type of provider that you are looking for as a collaborating partner, maybe they need to team up with you, but they don't know about this yet. So what type of providers are important for you to connect, and how do they benefit from teaming up with you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so the providers that I would typically work with would, of course, be therapists, because if my folks are clinically anxious or clinically depressed, then I will often refer to therapists, including somatic body worker types. So acupuncturists see my people a lot. Chiropractors, because there's a lot of healthcare misery and not taking care of our own bodies. And so those folks are looking for body workers in particular, and mind workers. So that comes up quite a bit. The other folks that I tend to talk with are really more in the just movement. So yoga, Pilates, somatic type practitioners, because what I find with most of my clients is they're not building in that time to take care of their bodies. They're pretty good with food. They're pretty good with some of the other, mind curiosity. They're learners, but they're not taking care of their bodies. So those are my people.
Got it. And thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I wanted to also ask you about that cortisol soup, sitting in the cortisol soup, right?
Yeah.
Interesting and catchy way that you phrase it. But also I want people to understand that cortisol, while it's such an important, it's not a bad hormone. It's a very important hormone. We absolutely need it. But cortisol can be dangerous when it's out of control. So when you talk about cortisol soup, what do you mean exactly? And why do people keep sitting in that soup?
Because it's habitual. So I coined that term with my daughter after using this lizard for a lot of time. And it's like, do you realize how much your thoughts are just ramping up your stress hormones? Because, the event has passed a long time ago, and then you're still sitting in it, and so, and do you know what that does with your stress hormones? And so we talked about cortisol, and I said, it's like sitting in the cortisol soup. She's like, wait, Mom, what was that? Like, that was the coolest thing. So, but it's an analogy that people get because they know what chronic stress feels like. But what we don't think about is how much it's our thoughts that are keeping us in there. And so I use that terminology really to help people realize that I need to bring my stress level down. Like, I can do something with the chronic part of it. Stress is not bad. You need to ramp up and run from the tiger. But the email all day long is not a tiger. So you still need to come down so that you can sleep, and so that you can renew and relax and rest. And so my people are always on that side of chronic stress, and they don't allow themselves to come down and relax. And so that's why practices like breathing and moving and being in nature and those, more somatic practices help bring down those stress hormones. And so I use that analogy, like, what gets you out of the soup, so that we can brainstorm about activities that make you feel rested and connected and digesting, and really intentionally connecting with people is part of it too, or pets if you don't have people. But what brings those stress hormones down? But then, the overachievers think, well, I can't ever be stressed. Like, I always need to live on that relaxation side. It's like, no.
I would like to see that. I would like to see that in reality. Even with one example, I haven't seen it.
It's not healthy. I mean, we can lay on the couch for 15 hours and watch Netflix too.
But then you get stressed out that you haven't achieved too much, right?
And it ramps up your stress hormones. I mean, so that's not good either. So that I like that there's a balanced way of being. And you're penduluming back and forth, but it's not hit the wall, hit the wall, hit the wall, which is what the overachievers tend to do. They're either all on or all off. And so, those, what I really like to work with people on is building in those strategies during the day. You're going to have a work sprint, and then you're going to have a stand up and walk around sprint and drink water. And, you don't have to wait till the weekend to take care of your body. Thank you. Yeah, no, mine is actually just out of reach, because if you don't do that, then that's when you're going to amp up into that cortisol suit by the end of the day, or the Sunday scaries. You've been sitting in it all week, and you finally relax by Sunday night, and then your stress hormones ramp up again because you've got to go back into it. And there's a more skillful way to work with that.
Yeah, very, very helpful. And you said something that is also very a very good way for people to look at it. It's okay to sprint, because sometimes we have to. We have a project, we have a deadline. We sprint, but sprint is not meant to last a marathon,
our entire
right?
lives.
So I think
Right.
this is something that a lot of people are struggling with. Is like, we have a sprint, and then once that one sprint is done, there is another one that already started that I didn't even know I participated in, and now I'm in the other one, and it becomes chronic, because you cannot run a marathon with a sprinting pace. That guy or a woman is just going to fall down at some point. So
right.
that is one of the mistakes that definitely a lot of people make, including myself, and I'm trying to train myself to do less of that. What are some other mistakes that you would say that are very, very common, but with a simple solution on the other side? So, for example, if you do this, try that. And if you do this, like a lot of people, please try that. Let's talk about maybe something you mentioned about sleep. You mentioned something about meditation. I don't know which ones you would consider a very important to mention here, tool for a mistake. But I'm curious, okay, if this is a mistake, that's your solution. If that's a mistake that you make, that's your solution.
So the first mistake is assigning value to spending all day in your email just because it's there. so a lot of my people, they get their dopamine hit from the email. So you don't have to answer every single email. You can prioritize the emails that need to be answered, and then you can leave the other ones for later. You can still take care of your body and have email. So taking away that idea that your value comes from the productivity, just that grind, is probably the first place that I start with people, is where are you spending your time? And then the second one is, how much time are you on social media? And I love it too. But there is a bit of a deliberate sprint. I'm going to allow myself X number of minutes for social media, and then I'm out and I'm going to do something else. So I view that as a tasting menu. It's not the meal. Yeah. So, snack on social media, go outside.
What a good analogy. Okay, so social media is not your meal. This is more like your snack. You're allowed to have it, but don't snack all the time.
Right. It's not bad. And so none of this is bad. None of these habits in and of themselves are bad habits. But when we try to do all of them, we don't have any space for any of the rest of it. And that's where people get in trouble.
What about meditation? And then people who tell you, I just don't meditate because I don't know how to, or it's not for me. What would you tell them?
So people tell me that meditation is not for them because they can't stop their thoughts. Like, well, you're not supposed to stop your thoughts, and B, meditation helps you pay attention to the content of them. So we start just kind of unraveling the experience of meditation. It's not going to be this blissful experience all the time. But it gets you very familiar with the content of your head so that you can choose something else. That's so the practice is really learning all of the things that are there so you can work with the thoughts, and ask deeper questions like, is that really true? And so if all you're feeling is the stress, you don't know the content of your thoughts. So I use that meditation practice so that I can pay attention in my real actual life. So that's the reason for it is, yes, you have all those good health benefits, but it's really about paying attention to when you're present and then noticing when you're not. And I don't know how to do that without a meditation practice.
So maybe it's the wrong definition of meditation that a lot of us have. We just think that meditation is a state that you're in complete control over your thoughts, or maybe you turn them off completely, or it's something that is this magic state that you're supposed to feel euphoric all the time. From what you're saying, this is not what meditation really is, but meditation is allowing you to have these thoughts. It's allowing you to be present and mindful when it comes to that. And there is something magical that happens, like Joe Dispenza talks about, the heart and mind and brain coherence, right? Let's talk about that a little bit so people can understand the physical aspect, because we are talking about something that may by many is considered a mental exercise, right? Meditation is like it's mental. How does that mental exercise, how does it affect our body?
It's a listening exercise. So it's not really there can be meditation techniques that engage your mental faculties if you're paying attention to something, but you're really paying attention to all of you, your mind, your body. Some people say heart, some people say spirit, but it's this experience of what's actually happening. And I think that's the most important part. It's rather than listening necessarily to some guidance, but learning to be okay with paying attention to things that aren't pleasurable so that you can notice the things that are, because it's a mixed bag, just like the rest of our lives really is like, oh, I noticed that this pain is here and I also feel okay. I noticed that I'm having a thought that's painful, and I noticed that then the next moment I don't have a thought. I noticed that, oh, it feels really good when I put my hands on my heart and I can breathe more deeply. And when I breathe deeply, I can feel my shoulders relax. So it's a whole body integrated experience. If we want to talk about integrative mind, body, spirit, that is mind, body, spirit, when we slow down enough to pay attention to it.
So really the practice of meditation is not a mental practice. It really is the full spectrum practice, we could say. It's not even, it's hard to say that it's just body and mental and physical, because maybe there is another layer that is on top of it. There are many people who go deep into psychoneuroimmunology and how we can control with our thoughts, control our body. Do you go that deep with your sessions, that maybe you're going to consciously try to influence your body to have a physical process happen, like maybe a pain possibly disappear or something like that? Or you would say that that's a little bit of a different practice than what you do?
It's a little bit different practice than what I would do, because my clients don't tend to come in physical pain. They tend to come in anguish, mental anguish of some sort. But so I typically work more with breath to slow down the torrent of all the just to bring the anxiety down. So I tend to work more from that perspective of, okay, let's find some spaciousness with breath and posture, so that we can really pay attention to the rest of it, and then get some strategy out on paper about what actually does help you feel good. Where are you finding joy? But we have to slow it down enough so that they can pay attention to that. So I use those pausing and body-oriented movement and breath practices to get people there, so they can really go, oh, things aren't so bad.
And things usually aren't as bad as we think, when we look from perspective. It's so, for me, a really helpful exercise is to look from perspective on a moment in time in the past that I felt in a similar way that I'm feeling today, if this is a bad day. And thankfully, there is not too many of these bad moments. But if there is a bad moment, I would think, like, when was the last time I felt like this before? And then how do I look at that from perspective from today? And that actually helps me a lot, because I'm like, that really wasn't a big deal, but I thought it was. And then there's always something that we can do. And I don't know if you also encourage people to practice action as one of the tools for mitigating stress, but that's also
absolutely.
something you do, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that is super, because that's what I know helps me. I said, okay, the only thing you can do, Mike, is do your best. What's the next best thing that you can think of to do that, and just do that one thing, right? And then I take action, and at least I have a little bit of that dopamine hit, I think, from knowing that I did my best. And we'll see what happens. But more often than not, taking action is part of the solution, instead of just marinating in that cortisol soup, like you mentioned. And it's just a little crazy. So I'm very happy to know that that's something that is not unique to only me, but other people use it too.
Yeah, I think it's wise action, and that's where I like to have that mindfulness piece too. It's not just take any action, because sometimes you take an unwise action that takes you in the wrong direction. So there is a little bit of what is the next right action or the next wise action, or you said next best thing. I think that's a wonderful way to think about it, is I'm going to do the best I can with the information that I have, but I'm going this way.
Yes. I would probably think twice before I do it, because usually, and just with this concept of thinking fast, thinking slow, it's yes, if the decision does not have a big impact, then you can probably make a decision like this. And if it was wrong, that's fine. That's okay. It wasn't a big impact. But if something does have a big impact long term, if something bothers me today, that means that probably is important to me. And if it is, then maybe let's sleep on it for a second. Let's meditate on it. Let's be mindful about this decision. What is the best next step? And the feeling that is very good, even if we mess up, that's I'm just sharing what's helping me in the context of mindfulness is the feeling. And again, even if we mess up, even if the decision was wrong, is to look in the mirror and say, you did your best today. You did your best. You really tried, right? And that it does help me, because we all make mistakes. And it's like, I would like to meet somebody who doesn't, but I think we all do.
Yeah, I don't actually want to meet somebody who doesn't.
I don't know if that person exists, right? So you want meeting or her.
They're stuck. There's lots of people that don't make mistakes if they don't take any risks ever, right? But I don't think that's that's where I get a little triggered by this, because I have students that are such perfectionists and they're afraid to try anything that isn't off script. And it's like, look, there's no roadmap. You move forward on this road, and if you decide, why can't you turn left? I mean, there's no wrong decisions, but stopping is not the wise action here. Like, you got to move. So I actually work with people a lot in that. What is the next thing that you're going to try?
That is great.
Instead of marinating in the soup.
yeah, I like it. It's like, if you go through the mud, you just keep going, right? Because one day it's gonna be better. Before we go, is there anything that you would like to mention to the person or people watching this that maybe is important? It's something that you reach for every day, and you're like, that's my secret tool. Please share it with people if there is something like that you haven't touched on yet.
So I think the thing that I would touch on is the look back. So you were always looking forward, but the look back, whether it's daily or weekly, to say what went well. I think the what went well is a place that's missing for a lot of us that are driven, because we're always looking for the next thing to achieve, to try. But there is something about that. What went well? What did I enjoy? That you can capture, and those are the memories and the visualization that you pull out when things are hard. And because we've all had those experiences where, oh yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, and that's what gets us through the hard times. But we forget sometimes because we're so forward looking. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. And I think most people don't even do that, because they're going to focus on something that went wrong, and they're going to marinate in that feeling or cortisol soup, like we mentioned, for quite a bit around something that went wrong. But what about the things that went well? We, in the entrepreneurial space, like you're talking about supporting entrepreneurs and supporting people who are driven, we set our thermostat on a much higher level, which is sometimes very good for success, because we do want to have that motivation to keep going. And you don't want to be high-fiving yourself for just getting out of bed. It's not kind of like not enough. But at the same time, because the thermostat is so high, in many cases, we just treat that a certain level of things going right is norm, not a reason to celebrate. But I think you actually mentioned something that is a key to success, because we need to look back and look objectively. There is a lot of people that don't really do it. The driven people, they think that, oh, it's normal, I'm running multiple businesses, there's something is happening here, good, but there's one thing that went bad, and I'm going to focus on this. Focusing on something that went well, and consciously even looking for it, because maybe we forgot to even pay attention that went well. that went well. And then Mel Robbins, right? She says, give yourself high five in the mirror. And I know that that's a representation of a concept that is much deeper than just a simple high five move. It's the teamwork with oneself, right?
Yeah,
very,
and it's a
very good.
skill I think that we miss teaching our kids too. Like look for that too. Look for the places where you enjoyed your life as well as the places you could improve.
You know what? I'm gonna tell Maya, and I'm gonna tell her tonight, because every night I like to ask her questions, and questions are the key to steering our thoughts the right direction, to have constructive solutions, I believe. So I like to ask, what are you grateful for? What did you love today? And all these type of questions. And that's going to be one of the questions that I would like to add to the list. What went well today? What can you be proud of? What are you happy about? And that's good, because that it puts it on our reticular activating system to give these things the attention, not the bad thoughts, the bad guy, just whispering in your ear, the self-negative limiting belief, right? I think this is very, very practical, and thank you for sharing that. So for people who want to know more, maybe somebody is watching this and they're like, I either have a question about this and you didn't cover it, or maybe I want to connect with you because I have a specific situation. It's not that easy, but I do have a question. Maybe she has an answer for me. How can people find you? Where can people find you?
So LinkedIn under Brigette Serfaty or Minding Your Minutes, YouTube Minding Your Minutes, Facebook Minding Your Minutes, or Brigette Serfaty. So you can find me in multiple places, and I'd love to connect because that's the fun part.
Super. Connect with Brigette. She is truly, truly amazing. I think that you had a very good sample of what's happening behind the scenes. And when you enter her world, we had a lot of conversations off camera, meaning like it was on camera because it was through Zoom, but it was off recording. And I will tell you, the more I'm finding out, the more excited I am for amazing people like Brigette who are just here to truly help us. And there are so many resources. So if somebody has that toolbox and there is a tool that you need, team up, try to share your toolbox with them, and just let's figure out how to make the world a better and easier place for all of us. Live mindfully, be productive, be happy, reduce your stress, and remember that healthcare is not just one discipline. It's an interprofessional collaboration. It's all these amazing things that we can do together that give us the compounding fantastic effect of good health and happiness. So once again, Brigette, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Have a great day.